and welcome to Ecoholics. The research process is a very important process that everybody must know, whoever is attempting the UGC NET examination. In the series of this research process, today what we're going to do is we're going to start with the settings of research questions, objectives and hypotheses, which is the stage 3 of the research process. The first 2 stages we have done, and in the first 2 stages we had understood the concepts of how to define the research problem and how to set various types of objectives of research, and also the various concepts regarding literature review. Now soon after, you or any researcher would make a literature review or do the literature review where you review a variety of documents related to the topic. The very important requirement would be to set the research questions, objectives and hypotheses. Once the researcher has understood what varieties of documentation has happened already in the world about or regarding the topic that one person aspires to research, definitely the research questions would be mandatory to make. Now these research questions would revolve around a variety of things. So the research questions would be revolving around the concepts like what do you want to research about? It's very important for a researcher to have a direction, and because of that the research questions will be such questions that will be posed by the researcher to identify what all things that researcher is going to find out in that particular research or in that particular thesis or the whole field work that the researcher is going to do. After those questions are framed, now to solve those questions, there have to be certain ways of solving those questions. So those ways or methodologies or pathways of solving those questions would be known as objectives. Initially, when we start with the research process, there are certain objectives that we formulate. They are different from these objectives. Why are they different? Because soon after your review of literature, a researcher would definitely understand that now that the topic has been narrowed down, now that there are a lot of areas in which the research has to be built up, now that the researcher knows exactly how many things have been researched about in that particular theme or under that particular topic, the objectives would be modified. So normally what the researcher would do, the researcher would modify the already existing research objectives. They would be going around to find the impact of one variable on other, to find whether one variable has a correlation with other, to analyze whether one variable is overpowering the other variable. Such types of research objectives will be made by the researcher. And now we have the concept of hypothesis. So whenever you frame the hypothesis, there are 2 types of hypothesis. So if I just erase this, now let's understand the concept of hypothesis. Hypothesis basically is a tentative statement which has been made by the researcher to understand what will be the correlation of one variable on the other. So to just make a gist out of that relationship, or to give a sentence to that relation that has to be found out, we term it as hypothesis. So hypothesis is nothing but a statement that will indicate what exactly the researcher is aspiring to find out, and what exactly the researcher thinks that a relationship between two or more variables is. Let me give an example. Let's say that because nowadays everybody has become very particular about cosmetics, both the genders are very much aware that a particular cosmetic has to be very organic, or it should not be synthetic, or the synthetic particles should not be used, otherwise it would damage the skin. Now, to actually find out whether such particles damage the skin, we conduct a research. During that research, or during the start of that research, of course, in that process, we are going to make a hypothesis. So, there are two types of hypothesis. One is H0, which is known as the null hypothesis. And the second one is the alternate hypothesis. So this is the alternate hypothesis. Okay. Now, a researcher has to primarily focus on the null hypothesis, because the null hypothesis is the only hypothesis that can be tested. Okay. Now, all the tests that are going to be done, for example, in research, there are a lot of tests. T-test, Z-test, F-test, ANOVA, R-test, and plethora of tests can be conducted. Statistical tests can be so conducted on any research or any database, and of course there are much more such tests which are there for qualitative data. Now, before we do all of those tests, we should understand to create how the hypothesis will be made. So, we will focus on the null hypothesis, because this is the hypothesis that will be tested. So, when we focus on the null hypothesis, and as we were taking the example of cosmetics, so if I say that cosmetics have no impact on a person's skin. Okay. Now, if this is a statement that I give, then this can be known as a null hypothesis. Why can it be known as a null hypothesis? Because this hypothesis or this statement is a tentative statement which will be tested whether or not cosmetics are harming or impacting the skin of any person or not. So this has been made. Now, if you have to narrow down the research, because cosmetics will include all types of cosmetics. So you can say synthetic cosmetics. Okay, you can say chemical cosmetics, you can say organic cosmetics, any type of cosmetics can be considered to narrow down your research, so that your research becomes more authentic and is narrowed down to an extent where you can actually test it with the most efficiency. So this becomes your hypothesis and framing the hypothesis. Now, because hypothesis is a very important part of your research, this has to be done very carefully. So the stage 3 has to be done very carefully, and it will be only done properly and efficiently when you have done your stage 2 efficiently, which is your literature review, and which is why your stage 3 has a very important impact on your research, because the tentative statement that you have created is going to be either accepted or rejected after the research has been done. When you have your database, when you have the processing and we can say analysis of the database, you will find out whether actually the database that you collected, it will tell you whether actually the synthetic or other cosmetics were harmful or had an impact on a person or not. So if, for example, this hypothesis is rejected, then what would it mean? If synthetic cosmetics have no impact on a person's skin. If this is rejected, it means that there is definitely some impact on the skin. Now, whether it is a favorable impact or an unfavorable impact, that definitely is going to be written in the conclusion or the analysis of your research thesis. If it is accepted, then of course, whatever you are thinking about in the correlation about synthetic cosmetics and your skin definitely are true, because you will definitely then understand with the analysis that synthetic cosmetics have no impact on any skin. Now, here there is something that we should note, is that we have said that on a person's skin means any person. So we are taking into consideration everyone. However, research cannot be conducted on everyone because there are so many limitations, and which is why you will have to always incorporate this particular prejudice that you have taken a certain set of persons over which a certain experiment or a certain study is going to be conducted. The more or the bigger the number of people, the bigger the number of sample, definitely the efficiency will increase, or the results will be better and efficient. So that is it in the stage 3 of setting research questions, objectives and hypothesis. We will meet soon in the next video of research process. Till then, tune into Ecoholics, subscribe us and share and like our videos. Thank you.